The illusion or the truth, I don't know, whichever, is that when you join government, you become powerful, and by the way, you also make money. When you got a committee judging an ad, it'll never work because you'll end up coming up with a safe commercial. Even if you have a small budget, if your messaging is right, may pag-asa ka eh.
This is Breaking Glass.
Greg Garcia is a longtime political consultant, aka public relations strategist, who's worked on the campaigns of Ping Lacson, Manny Villar, Gibo Teodoro, and Jojo Marbinay. Imagine a photograph of a campaign rally and you see that guy standing at the back, at the leftmost. Well, that's not Greg Garcia. Rather, he's the guy who orchestrated the whole thing. It's a very secretive world they operate in, and goody, he joins us and promises to tell the truth. Greg, thanks for coming.
My pleasure.
First, let's be clear about what you do. You work with politicians to make sure they win elections. So, I guess imagine parang they're like energy drinks and you are the marketing geniuses that make sure they get sold. Am I correct? Is that it?
Yes. In the old politics, they always thought of politics in terms of rallies, making sure that you have great connections with government officials. But that has changed. Now, mass media, especially television, is key to winning it. So somebody's really must be good in crafting the messages.
So your expertise is in the media. Am I correct?
Yes, in I guess strategic communications and its execution. The two parts. You gotta have the right strategy. You gotta have a powerful execution.
And for the 2010 election cycle, you have an interesting story. You first started out with Manny Villar's campaign and then with Gibo. Am I correct? And then, yet, it didn't work out for them because I think you were not given the proper control that you need, right? So you moved on to Jojo Marbinay and then things worked out for him. Am I correct?
To some extent, I started working with Manny Villar. We started with this the OFWs, So I kind of did that for him, and some great guy to work with. But towards, when the numbers were getting better, as always, more people want to get involved, So I'm not comfortable with there are many people involved because how do you, what happens to accountability, So I kind of slipped out, and I've been enamored I was enamored, and I still am, by Gibo, So work with Gibo in terms of the presidential election. But at the same time, I got a chance to work for the Makati mayor as a BP candidate. So that's interesting that I could work with Gibo and work with Binay. So it's interesting that I got, at least for me, it's a great perspective. I got to work with some of the leading candidates, and I had an insight, I guess, in the way they run their campaign. So it's interesting.
And in fact, the Binay campaign, that's a story in itself. You shocked us all with the win.
Yes,
everybody was expecting, of course, Mar Roxas to win, but you came from behind and then won. How did it happen? And I'm sure there were some missteps also along the way with Mar Roxas's campaign. And I believe that's also something to do with leather shoes. Am I correct? Is that...
In fact, I'd say to a great extent we won because they goofed.
What was the goof?
Well, look at the messaging. What did they stand for? Mar is a good friend, I don't know if he treats me as a good friend yet. Still now, but at the end of the day, what was the message that they have? I can't for the life of me remember what he stood for. But
so it was Binay was clearer to the people. Is that what you're saying?
Very clear.
How did you craft that message?
First of all, they had to listen to many presentations. It wasn't as if one day they said, "Oops, let's call Greg." It's just a friend said, "Why don't you listen to his thoughts? If he were to handle you." So something very simple. My experience in the advertising means tells you, you've got to have some authenticity. When you go out there and claim something, better be true. And when you look at the track record of Jojo Binay as a mayor, very impressive. The people in Makati are so happy. So
that's what you use.
And I said, it doesn't take a juice to know that. Hey, let's play this up. you have a good track record, In
So
fact,
that's why
you
we
are-
kept hearing about Makati,
of course,
Makati. The people are happy. Free movies for seniors. That kind
all
of
those
thing.
things, they are getting their money's worth from the city government. It's a great story. And when I looked further, his personal story is so interesting too. And the guy really used to feed porky pigs,
So that's how
and
it
and
started.
and and
So
really,
that's the story you use. Now, speaking of that goof, well, about the leather shoes, as I was saying, Rojas, because I think it wasn't clear. He wasn't being sincere. I mean,
No.
he was like Mr. Mr. Palenquero. Am I
Here's
correct?
an interesting
But
part.
he was still wearing.
Here's an interesting part. In 2007, I think, I was with Mar.
Okay.
Okay. Even as early as 2007, we were starting to plot the presidential campaign, And I think one of at that time, and I don't want to say it still is, at that time, I'm a very impatient guy. My problems then was, I really think in this business, you've got to be nimble and dynamic. And I think at that time, it just took a long time to make decisions, So having said that, my sense, and I could be wrong again, is that the problem with, if you look back, I don't think they were nimble enough to do things fast. Kay BP was practically left to by myself. I would say, let's do this, let's do that. I said, okay. So it's pretty quick.
And that's how you want to work, to be able to.
Because it should be dynamic. You can't sit down. Even in my previous life in the advertising business, the most difficult part is when you got a committee judging an ad, it'll never work because you'll end up coming up with a safe commercial, And a safe commercial is a safe commercial,
And the other thing, let's talk about this. You say, me, for example, I decide, hey, I want power, I want money, I want to have a Porsche, I want to have a starlet as a girlfriend. So I decide I want to run for politics. I want to be a senator. What's the first thing you want to tell me?
Well, if that's your objective, I don't like you. Really. To a certain extent, I'm very choosy also about the candidates. I want to make sure that, it's payback time for me in the business. I mean, grateful to God Almighty that I've been lucky, or fortunate enough. So, whatever little talents have been given me, I want to make sure
For good
that
people.
Yeah.
All right.
yeah.
So let's say I'm a good person. I decide I want to help people.
First thing I'm going to do is, okay, why do you want to be senator?
I want to help the people.
In what sense? Where are you good at? What is your background? What have you done? Where will you be good at?
All right.
And there, right? You got to
So,
find
yeah,
out what you're going to be good at.
And then after that, what are the main things you
And then
will
I'm
tell
going to look whether, based on research, you will know naman what resonates and what doesn't resonate, So, find out where you really fit in, what you stand for. And go and sell what you stand for,
How much will it cost me to win an election?
If you look at today, where TV is the most dominant medium, if you follow the Comelec rules, they said every candidate is entitled to 220 minutes of TV commercial, or the equivalent of 240 30-second spots. If you average it at 400,000 per spot, you're talking about 90 million more or less.
Okay, that's just for
Television,
TV.
yeah.
Okay.
But
Whole thing, how much am I gonna?
But I personally, I think if you're on TV, you're pretty much covered. All the others are just because you have to do it, because people are asking you to do it. But it's pretty safe if you have a good television commercial. I look at it as an 80-20. 80% will be because of your TV advertising or other communications. Not just TV, but principally TV. 80% will be carried by that effort.
That's how powerful a medium it
and
is.
20% would be just making sure that you understand that in certain areas where you're strong, you make sure people are able to go out and vote on the day. It's more of the day of the election, protecting your voters.
Now, how do I come up with that amount, the 90 million? I mean, if I'm a lone candidate, that where do I come up with that?
That is your problem. But levity aside, if you're good, there are people naman, I think, in this country who are willing to. It's like a racehorse. There are some businessmen who are willing to bet on you.
Why would the businessman want to give me money?
Just to make sure that they're not harassed.
So this is sort of like protection money for them.
In a sense, they're not asking for favors because they're already doing well.
They just want to make sure
Just
I
to make
will
sure-
not bug them when I
Just make
when I
sure
work.
that the government, doesn't become, an impediment to the success of the business sector. I mean, free enterprise, the local guys, and I think even the states, they just want to make sure that they can do business without the unnecessary interference of the government. And I don't think we're unique,
That's true. I mean,
That's why
you're
they're
right.
lobbying
Lobbying,
groups.
correct,
Yeah,
exactly,
correct.
exactly. I mean, corporations give money. This is in the U.S. Give money
That's
to
right.
to groups.
Here, it's not legitimized, but it follows the same concept.
Tell me the truth. Is a significant amount of the budget goes to the media? Am I correct? So you
Yes.
said TV, but there's also newspapers and radio. I'd like to know, does a significant amount of the budget, I'll be spending, will it go to paying off the media, something, they call the envelopmental
It exists.
journalism?
Yep. It exists. In fact, but it exists in various forms now.
Okay.
One of the interesting forms now that I see on radio is they go to you with a package and say, for X million pesos, sir, we're going to give you spots in all our station and interview you and include you in the news.
And
They're being
correct.
packaged, no?
So these are networks.
Yeah.
We're saying networks coming to a politician and say, look, we'll do this for you. And favorable interviews, will they go soft on you? I mean,
It depends on what they promise. And I guess it's interesting how that evolved because once upon a time, in the not too distant past, the commentators were the ones getting the money. So the owner said, Teka, why should the commentators get the money? Why don't they package it,
So in fact, I think they call it retail and wholesale. I think it's retail when it's the commentators who get it.
Yeah.
So the network said, hey, let's
Yeah.
get in on it.
Yeah.
So they decided to come up with
They
packages.
control it, Of course, the retail still works,
But isn't that sort of legitimizing corruption? I mean, it is corruption. Do you think it is corruption?
To
doing
a
it that
certain
way?
extent, it's not fair. No, it's not fair.
But why isn't it fair?
No, because you cannot sell news, you cannot sell interviews, But, if they were really responsible journalists, they would go out and interview people. But why do you have to ask them to pay you to interview people? And the culprit is more the networks, the media, and not the candidates. They're the ones offering.
They're the ones coming up with
I
the
will,
packages.
I'll interview you.
And as a
It's not
politician, you want to do it, right? I mean,
Well, if you're smart, you'll think twice. First of all, there are only 2 stations worth each one in every area. Pangalawa, think about it. If they're offering this to me, there are 24 candidates. If everybody buys, there are 24 candidates to be interviewed in a 30-minute news. So what's the news? You interview 24 minutes and only 6 minutes for the news?